Why use only one compressor to compress your vocals when instead you could use two? Well, the 1176 compressor and the LA-2A compressor are a perfect combo to achieve this technique known as serial compression. Let me show you how it works. So here I have a scratch vocal. It doesn't have any tuning or really anything special going on with it as far as mixing goes, just a basic EQ and a de-esser. Now you can see here that the vocal definitely has some dynamics going on. There are a lot of peaks that need to be contained in order for the vocal to be consistent and even. Now the problem that you're going to run into is if you only use one compressor, these peaks in the vocal are really going to throw that compressor off and make it work really hard. Because if you're wanting to compress the overall vocal, you're going to have to lower that threshold to a point where sometimes these peaks are going to be triggering that compressor more than you might want. So you'll end up getting a lot of gain reduction and compression. Now the way to counter this is to use two separate compressors. The first compressor is only going to be used to catch and compress the peaks. And the second compressor will then have a more controlled signal being fed into it so that it can just apply smooth and consistent compression without having to deal with these large peaks. Now, a great compressor to use for catching these peaks is the 1176 compressor. Now, there are a lot of different emulations of this particular compressor. This is the CLA-76 by Waves Audio, and I'll link it in the description, but feel free to use whatever plugin you have access to. Now, the great thing about an 1176 type compressor is that it has a very fast attack and release time. This makes it great for catching peaks and turning them down and then letting go once the peak has been compressed. Now, the attack time on this compressor is a little different than other compressors, so all the way to the right with your attack knob is going to be the fastest setting possible. And for an 1176 compressor, the attack time at its fastest setting is going to be 50 microseconds. And just to put that in context, most compressors measure attack time in milliseconds and not microseconds. So this gives you a glimpse of how fast this compressor can turn down peaks. And again, that's why the 1176 type compressor is a great compressor to kind of lead off your compression for your vocal chain. Now, the LA-2A, which we're going to use for our second compressor, you can see here that it does not have attack and release settings available. And that's because it's built into the compressor. So the reason that this is such a good compressor to use after the 1176 is because it has a very smooth and gentle release. And this is something that I heard in one of Mixbus TV's tutorials that I thought was really interesting. I'll link that video in the description, but basically the LA-2A's release time slows down as it gets closer and closer to 0 decibels of gain reduction. So the role of this compressor is to take the signal that's already now pretty uniform and consistent from running through an 1176 compressor, and it's going to add even more compression to the vocal that is now less dynamic to give you that buttery and smooth type of compression that is pleasing to the ears. Utilizing these two compressors in tandem is going to help you keep the vocal in a pocket so that you can push it forward in the mix. So let's go ahead and set this up and I'll show you the settings that I use. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the LA-2A compressor for now, and we're just going to focus on the 1176. So for the compressor that's going to be used to catch the peaks of the vocal, I'm going to set the ratio to 8:1. Now I either set it at 8:1 or 12:1. For this tutorial, we're going to go with 8:1. Now for the attack time, I like to have it set at a very fast attack setting because when those peaks cross the threshold, we want the compressor to quickly turn those peaks down. So make sure that you have a very fast attack set for your first compressor. For the release time, you want to have anywhere from a fast to medium release. Sometimes you just want to experiment with this setting and play the vocal back, but you want the compressor to be compressing the peaks but then quickly letting go so that you're not compressing any of the other material in your vocal. Now the next thing that I like to do is play the vocal back and adjust this input knob over here and kind of drive the signal into the compression threshold to start getting some compression. And I typically aim for anywhere between 3 to 7 decibels of gain reduction here on the compression meter. So it's actually very dependent on the vocal recording and how many peaks and how much dynamics there are to it. But for me, 3 to 7 decibels is a good starting point. And as I said before, I really only want to compress the peaks with this compressor. So when I have it set correctly, we should only be actively compressing here on the louder peaks. And then once I have some gain reduction dialed in, I'm going to use the output knob to adjust the volume of the compressed vocal leaving the plugin. Building me up and then you're tearing me down, screaming I don't think I'll last any longer. I'm coming undone and it's wearing me out. Sometimes I wish that I was stronger. Building me up and then you're tearing me down, screaming I don't think I'll last any longer. I'm coming undone and it's wearing me out. Sometimes I wish that I was stronger. Okay, so I think that sounds pretty good right there. I was getting around 3 to 7 decibels of gain reduction on the peaks. So let's go ahead and turn on the CLA-2A compressor. And really the only thing to adjust here is this peak reduction knob right here. This will control how much compression we're getting on the vocal. And then once we get our compression where we like it, we'll adjust the output gain knob right here to control the volume of the vocal leaving the compressor. Now for me personally, with the CLA-2A compressor, I'm going to aim for about 5 decibels of gain reduction, but it really just depends again on the vocal recording and how dynamic it is. Building me up and then you're tearing me down, screaming I don't think I'll last any longer. I'm coming undone and it's wearing me out. Sometimes I wish that I was stronger. Building me up and then you're tearing me down, screaming I don't think I'll last any longer. I'm coming undone and it's wearing me out. Sometimes I wish that I was stronger. Building me up and then you're tearing me down, screaming I don't think I'll last any longer. I'm coming undone and it's wearing me out. Sometimes I wish that I was stronger. Okay, so as you saw on the gain reduction meter, the compressor was kind of grabbing the vocal and not really letting go, right? We're just getting constant compression across the whole entire vocal. And that's kind of the role of the second compressor, right? Now that we have a more consistent signal being fed into this compressor, it can really just kind of hold on to the vocal and apply that gentle compression. Let's go ahead and take another listen and pay attention to both of these compressor interfaces to see how much total gain reduction we are getting for the vocal. Building me up and then you're tearing me down, screaming I don't think I'll last any longer. I'm coming undone and it's wearing me out. Sometimes I wish that I was stronger. Okay, so with the two compressors combined, we were getting about 12 decibels of gain reduction. So breaking that compression up into two different stages is going to give us a more transparent sounding compression. We're not working any one compressor too hard. Each compressor has a job, and that job can be easier for the compressor when it has less of a workload. All right, so that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the content. Please consider subscribing to the YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. Leave me a comment, let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.